Okay, Pennywise Pauper, match 1. We are playing Elves. We have lost a die roll. Okay, this hand is pretty good. We have a bunch of mana Elves, a Quarian Ranger, which can give us even more mana. We would really like to find a blue source for this Distant Melody, or an action card, like a Timberwatch Elf, but this is pretty good. So we're going to keep it. Our opponent mulliganed to 6 and scryed to the top, and they are playing Affinity, apparently. Alright, Timberwatch Elf. Okay, that's one of the things that we were asking for. So one of the really great things about this deck is that Quarian Ranger, if I don't hit a forest next turn, can actually generate mana by casting it and cost -1 mana. Because I can play it, untap my Elvish Mystic, and untap and return my forest. Elvish Mystic is down. So I'm going to do that exact same trick again with another Elvish Mystic, so that I still have the Quarian Ranger line open next time. Actually, that was quite dumb of me. I should have played Quarian Ranger and then Elvish Mystic. It's okay, it's free the turn that I play it, as long as I don't have another forest in hand, but it would have been better to get it out earlier. Although this does save it in my hand in case our opponent has a bolt and they're trying to decide what to remove. They probably would get rid of the Elvish Mystic instead of the Quarian Ranger, but just in case, it might be good that we protected it. Alright, our opponent has cast Thoughtcast to draw 2 more cards. The fact that they had to think about that for a while indicates that maybe they had something to do with all 3 of their mana. Alright, Galvanic Blast gets rid of the Elvish Mystic, and a Springleaf Drum comes down. Our opponent's at 3 cards in hand. So this turn I am going to do the Quarian Ranger trick, assuming I don't draw a land. Okay, we did draw a land. So now we have some options. We can play Elves plus Ranger, or we can play Priest of Titania. It's very interesting. Priest of Titania has much higher upside, and also Quarian Ranger isn't quote-unquote free to play right now, because we already made our land drop, so returning a land doesn't net us a mana this turn. So we're going to try to resolve the Priest. Another Springleaf Drum. Not too worried about that. Mirror Enforcer. And our opponent is at 1 card in hand. Alright, our opponent has passed a turn with 1 card in hand. So we're going to lead off with Quarian Ranger. And we're going to try to resolve this Lissalana Huntmaster first, so we can start making tokens. So I'm going to tap the Priest of Titania for 2, use the Quarian Ranger to untap the Priest and return a forest, netting myself 3 mana if this works correctly. Okay, and now I'll play... Actually, I shouldn't do that. That was silly of me. So I'm going to replay this forest, and I'm going to cast Lissalana Huntmaster with forest mana. That way the Priest taps for 3. And I can play Timberwatch Elf as well. I could also play double Llanowar Elves, but I'd rather get the Timberwatch Elf online. And I get a trigger, always yes, always yield. And not a bad turn at all. So, assuming Lissalana survives, I'm going to be able to make 2 more tokens next turn and 2 more 1/1s. So this Mirror Enforcer is going to be able to get chumped a couple of times. And the Timberwatch Elf will definitely outrace it. But if our opponent draws some more action, then we could be in trouble. Okay, there's a Sun Chaser. They had to tap their Mirror Enforcer for white with a Springleaf Drum. Okay, so there's no way we can get blue mana at the moment. We're going to start off by casting these Elves pre-combat to make the Timberwatch Elf better. And then we're going to attack. Okay, and we can swing with everything and then pump whatever they block. Actually, I'm just going to do it like this. Okay, yep, that's everything we can attack with besides the Timberwatch Elf. Our opponent is not going to block. So here we have a really cool thing we can do, which is this. We're going to pump up this token, and we're going to see if our opponent bolts it. And our opponent did not have a bolt. So now we're going to use Quarian Ranger to untap the Timberwatch Elf, returning to forest. Hit the same elf again in case of a bolt. And our opponent dies. So that's how fast Elves is. Our first match, first game, we win on turn 5. through 2 removal spells. Our opponent had 2 blasts, so pretty good start. Okay, so for boarding against Affinity, we definitely want all 4 Gleeful Sabotage. We can take out their lands with it, or we can take out their huge creatures pretty easily. Conspire lets us take care of 2 things if we can tap 2 untapped creatures as we're casting this. Additionally, they are playing red, and they do have access to Electrickery in the sideboard, so Wrap and Vigor could be very important in this match. The problem with this deck is there's not a lot of flex slots to get rid of, so I'm not always able to board in all the cards that I want to. So the cards that I typically board out are Viridian Longbow when it's not good, which it's not right now. Our opponent has no 1 toughness creatures, except for Germ tokens, and those aren't important. We're going to get rid of the 2 Elvish Visionary. They're good when the deck is doing good. Basically, when you're drawing a bunch of cards and you have a ton of mana and you just want to keep cycling through your deck, it's great to get an elf and keep on going. But it's not a threat on its own like a Timberwatch elf is, or even a Well-Wisher. Additionally, I generally board out some number of Distant Melody. If I assume our opponent's going to board in all the removal that they have and focus on getting rid of our important elves, especially our mana producers, then I expect not to get a critical mass of elves too often, and I don't want to draw like 2 Distant Melody in my hand. So I need 3 more cuts. Is there anything that's particularly bad against Affinity? Not particularly. I guess the Wirewood Pride is a little bit less exciting because they have bolts, so they can bolt in response to a Wirewood Pride. So we can just focus on trying to use our Timberwatch Elves to pump up. Additionally, Well-Wisher, gaining life is good, but against a deck that has Electrickery, it's not great because eventually they could find Electrickery and Electrickery us, and it doesn't really matter how much life we have because most of our elves will be dead except for Timberwatch Elves and Lysolana Huntmasters. Alright, and let's go to game 2. Alright, our opponent is on the play. We have 2 of our important sideboard cards, 1 Gleeful Sabotage and 1 Wrap and Vigor, but we only have 2 creatures. Generally, that's quite bad, but being able to Gleeful Sabotage even their lands away makes me really want to keep this. Additionally, I'm not likely to draw lands because we have very, very few in the deck. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this. If I draw a forest in my first turn or my second turn, I'm doing pretty bad. But if I just draw a runner under a creature, which is fairly likely, I think this could be a very good hand. Our opponent plays a Chromatic Star and passes. Okay. We will lead off with Llanowar Elves. In general, when you have a regular elf, a regular mana elf, and a Birchlore Rangers, you want to lead off with the regular elf, unless you also have a Nettle Sentinel to combo with the Birchlore Rangers. And even then, you can play them both on turn 2, if you desire. Alright, our opponent casts a Prophetic Prism and then casts Frogmite for no mana. And another Gleeful Sabotage. Well, if we weren't going to draw a creature, that was a good thing to draw. Additionally, we have a blue source with this Birchlore Ranger. So we can't cast Gleeful Sabotage and Conspire this turn. And our opponent has access to any color of mana they want due to the Prophetic Prism, and to a lesser extent the Star, so we can't really color screw our opponent by hitting their blue or their black source. We could just kill the Frogmite. That would definitely be something to consider. But I think I'm just going to pass here. Gleeful Sabotage is a sorcery, so we can't use it on their turn. We're just going to hold up Wrap and Vigor in case they have a removal spell. Okay, here's an Auriok Sunchaser. We don't really mind that. A Thoughtcast. And our opponent's going to attack. I don't really have anything else better going on, so I think I'm going to use one of these Gleeful Sabotages to kill a Frogmite. Or, sorry, this Wrap and Vigor. Oh, I thought I had 2 Wrap and Vigor and one of the other. Yeah, that was probably a bad idea. I probably should have saved that. Okay, so now we're going to get to Gleeful Sabotage with Conspire. Or we can Distant Melody, but I don't want to Distant Melody just yet. I'd rather be able to Distant Melody for more than 2 cards. So we're going to cast Gleeful Sabotage with Conspire, and then the question is what we're going to hit. The Prism gives them any color of mana, but it doesn't net them mana. So I think I'm going to take out their 2 blue sources. And then I'll change it to the other seed of the synod. And between doing this turn and next turn, we might just be able to take our opponent off of mana for a very long time, and then Distant Melody for a bunch of cards, and then draw into more action, and hopefully overwhelm our opponent. But if they just keep on making land drops every turn, that might not work. So we'll see. Carapace Forger. Okay, so they have a 4/4. And they are attacking us for 3. We're going to get to turn off Metalcraft here and make that Carapace Forger a much slower clock. So I'm trying to figure out if there's any way I can cast all 3 spells in my hand this turn. So I'm going to start off by casting Quirion Ranger. Then I'm going to Gleeful Sabotage. Both of their lands away. Tap 2 creatures. Hit the other land. And now if I Quirion Ranger, I can untap a creature, but that's not enough because I can't get blue mana as well. Because blue mana costs me 2 taps, unfortunately. But our opponent is not going to be able to elect Trickery this turn because they only have 1 land. At least not with Overload. And we take 2 from Carapace Forger. Our opponent did make a land drop, unfortunately, so they might just recover from us taking care of all their lands. Okay, that was an excellent draw. We're going to go get an island with this, and then follow up with a Distant Melody. Alright, here we go. We get to draw 5 cards, assuming our opponent does not have a removal spell. Okay, excellent. So we don't have enough mana to do anything. Actually, we do. We haven't used Quirion Ranger yet. So we can untap a Elvish Mystic and make more mana. Or we could Gleeful Sabotage our opponent. That's really tempting. Actually, can we do that? We can't Gleeful Sabotage with Conspire, so we're just going to hold up and Rapid Vigor for now. We'll let our opponent attack us a little bit more, and then we'll untap when we get to Gleeful Sabotage. With Conspire, taking out another 2 lands. Alright, our opponent's going to Galvanic Blast. Our Birchlore Ranger, that's fine. I can still use Quirion Ranger to untap an Elvish Mystic to do Rapid Vigor. Alright, our opponent is finally stuck on lands. That's just what we wanted. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make sure we get this Well-Wisher online. And we're going to Conspire using creatures that have Summoning Sickness. Tap 2 untapped creatures. Drawing 3 Gleeful Sabotage here is pretty incredible. Alright, our opponent's going to blast the Priest of Titania. We could Rapid Vigor right now to save it. The mana is very good if and only if we draw Distant Melody. Otherwise, we don't need the mana. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it. Alright, so I was about to untap an Elf with the Quirion Ranger to generate another mana so that I could Rapid Vigor and save our Priest of Titania. And then the Gleeful Sabotage trigger would take out both of these. Our opponent missed their land drop last turn, so they would have to top deck a land to be able to get back into the game. And then we would untap. We'd have a Sylvan Ranger to be able to thin out our deck a little bit more, and a Well-Wisher gaining us 7 life a turn. And that would be able to stop our opponent from killing us while we found some more answers, since we're so far ahead on mana. So that's definitely not typical of this deck. Gleeful Sabotage is very good against Affinity, but you don't typically draw 3 of them. But we'll take what we can get. Alright, that's match 1 in the books for Pauper Elves.